It's of Hollywood Joel Sange, joined by the author of the Dark Shadows Daybook, Patrick McCray. We're here to discuss 1840. So, in 1995, we meet this not so nice ghost, and everybody thinks it's Gerard Stiles. It's Gerard Stiles. Yeah, about that one. No,
I mean Ivan Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Roger Miller or someone.
Yeah,
and given his coiffure, I have to ask, as I always do, was his nickname Hair?
His nickname was Handsome.
Because mine isn't. Either one of those. So anyway, go on. Yeah.
Right. That's the one thing I really found curious. When we finally go back to 1840, Julia goes through Quentin's staircase. It keeps reappearing and disappearing. So when it reappears, she goes through. The zombies are wrestling with Barnabas. They're holding him back.
Including Chuck Morgan, my favorite, Big Ben Morgan, buried in Chattanooga. I got to go visit.
That was one of the coolest scenes there too, because they're like grabbing him, and you never seen just anybody just hold people just hold Barnabas back like this.
No, not at all.
It was just really cool and neat. When I was watching it over this week with the kids, my daughter's like, "Dad, who are those people?" I'm like, "They're zombies, honey."
Here's the thing: Canadians are far too reasonable to have to be restrained or withheld, really, for any reason. And I can only imagine. So if you got a Canadian vampire, very, very polite, very reasonable vampire, Canadian zombies, they're probably vegetarians. I mean, that's how they would probably just ask him to play one of those weird games that they have with the pucks on the tables and the cat in the cradle and the maple syrup and the.
And you notice they weren't trying to bite him either.
What?
And they weren't trying to bite him either.
No, they weren't. They were just, well, I mean, they were. God knows how long their teeth had been out. The most they would do is just gum him. And maybe that's a plus. I don't know, but they were very concerned. Chuck had to get that tapestry off his head. He's running around. He's got that thing. Somebody throws it and it winds up on his head, and he has to throw it off. That's the highlight of the episode. I love that.
Barnabas, can we gnaw your arm? But so Julia goes through the staircase. She ends up in the playroom, and she opens the door. And so she's back here. There's a lot of characters. There's Gabriel. There's the blonde-haired girl, Samantha.
Carrie,
yeah. I always forget Carrie's name. Sorry. But
she remembered yours. I got my dinner here, Jewel. I'm sorry. Girls got to eat.
Sorry. But it's really interesting, too. So when she's back alone, but she runs into Ben Stokes. And
he looks awful.
And he's aged about 40 years or so.
It is, and this is a purposeful thing. It is some of the most grotesque makeup we've seen on this show. It's, the makeup was usually pretty good, but here it looks awful. It's kind of hairy and paunchy. I think some of that's on purpose, and maybe they were doing something different with the videotape, but I love it because it makes everything there just hot and sweaty and urgent. Everyone looks kind of hungover and oily skinned. And I like that about it. It's almost like Apocalypse Now. It has this weird immediacy that you wouldn't get any other way.
I think if it looked too pretty, it wouldn't have maybe looked so gritty. You know what I mean? I think that's one thing maybe they were going for is this sort of gritty looking makeup feel, and it works for this story arc.
It does. I mean, I hope it was on purpose because it really is an indelible effect. I mean, holy mackerel, does that look just god awful? I'm talking about my dinner. Dark Shadows, yeah, whatever. Blah blah blah. Is it about a vampire or something? I don't know. Is that the one with Dr. Spock? Um, no, but seriously, I hope it was on purpose. I mean, everything had changed. But am I wrong in saying that it really does look pretty wretched? I mean, just everything is just it looks hungover.
Well, even when I'm not trying to jump ahead, but like,
oh please,
from Ben Stokes's like rustic looking makeup and like, he looks older. He looks awful. But when Quentin comes in, Quentin looks like
oh God, send me away and almost drown on a sea voyage if I show up looking like that.
Like he looks like a hot mess at times. It's like,
oh really? I thought he looked great.
No. Watch like his hair and then his face. It looks. I don't know. Like it just felt like. I don't know. To me, it did look like when we first meet the other Quentin, the 1897 Quentin.
That's right. His identical nephew, as we all have.
And even the parallel Tom Quentin, they look great by comparison. This, to me, he looked like a hot mess at times because he was smacking Samantha around.
Well, that's a behavioral thing. They really got into Quentin as an abuser.
He is.
I mean, they really did. He's so nice as his philandering werewolf.
Yes.
And then he comes back and he's parallel time and he's awful there and he shows up here. I mean, I like 1840 Quentin a lot. In some ways, it's my favorite Quentin, but he still is a little too hot under the collar for the ladies.
I think all versions of Quentin are supposed to just have a hot temper, and each one differs with each one.
Okay.
In sort of fairness to like David Selby's characters, because right, yeah. Like Selby in 1897, like he does grab women, he twists their arms, but in 1970 he's vocal, he's talking to ghosts, he's drinking. I called him the OG Jack Torrance, and he sort of was. But with 1840, he just smacks Samantha around. He threatens to drag her down the steps. But again,
he didn't like 1776.
I really like the fact that Ben has Barnabas's portrait in his room. It's not in the hall. It's not in the foyer. So, and I want to say his granddaughter is he thinks
his granddaughter or his niece.
Yeah, niece or granddaughter, I forget which one.
Yeah,
but he's thinking about all like the secrets he's carried. He's looking at the Barnabas portrait, and I love it. And when Julia explains to him what's going on, it's like it's so hard for him to believe, and why wouldn't it be? It's like he doesn't know what time.
Yeah, but he's been through so much.
He has.
Gets to it eventually.
I mean, too, Victoria. Well, I do think that Victoria Winters told him she was a time traveler, but with this though, he agrees to help her. He gives her clothes. Julia loses an earring that Gabriel finds. I love that part.
Yeah,
and
has a real slick way out of it too, as I recall. I remember, what does she say? She says something really slick and just kind of like whoop. She
says, "Oh, that's not mine."
But she just says, "I stole it. I stole it. It clipped right off Joan Bennett's ear." She had one brandy and bullion too many, and she was out, and I just took it. Hey, look, it's Jennings Lang.
It's just, but Gabriel's really a great character. I mean, Christopher Pennock is
the best.
Has he ever played a bad character, you think?
No. I mean, he wasn't really fond of his work as Jeb. He wasn't fond of his work as anything. He was really he was right up there with me in terms of being admirably down on himself and his own work. It was endearing. And you couldn't really tell here I am, I dive right into the name dropping. You couldn't really tell if it was if he truly did have low self-esteem, which, you know, he's always threatening to kill himself and he's a dramatic life, or if he was kind of fishing for compliments, and I don't see the two as being mutually exclusive, and I was happy to give them to him. So he did say that he just adored playing Gabriel, because I brought it up as just this wonderful character. I think that's when one of the things I really appreciate, and this starts with Cyrus, but, you know, once they get that, you know, unibrow monstrosity of Sebastian Shaw out of the way, I mean, he just looked god awful. That's like, can we make him look more like a caveman from a Gene Roddenberry pilot with that weird tunic?
I like Sebastian.
I like Sebastian too, but he looks kind of weird. He's got a lot too much eyebrow. I mean, it's like, who invited Brooke Shields? So anyway,
I look weird. Do you know what I had to do to convince my wife to marry me? Anyway,
what did you have to shave? Anyway, so and the lambs are still screaming. So, but all seriousness aside, no, they finally figured out that they had a better actor than they did a hottie. And that he's just, you know, Selby can do the character stuff really well. I mean, like, look at him as Batofi. He's amazing. I mean, why on earth we have this many Star Wars movies and they haven't put the pinch on Selby to play an Imperial something, or a Dark Sith, or a West Virginian, or some, you know, frightening creature, you know, in the Star Wars universe. But they haven't. But holy cow, Pennock, it's like they just finally surrendered. They said, "Okay, Chris, you're an actual actor. Shit, okay, we're gonna write a part for you." And it's Gabriel. He's got the squeeze ball. And is it me, or does it take a little while for Gabriel to get really funny? Or is he that funny out of the gate?
No, he's sort of funny out the gate, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why. When he's talking about Angelique, he goes from sort of being serious, but he's sort of being humorous. He's teasing about it too, and so it's like, wait, this guy knows about Angelique. But then you hear from members of the family that Gabriel's sort of the family historian. So what Barnabas has been, what Julius claimed to be, no, this guy's the real deal. He knows the family history up and down and every little rumor and innuendo. And
only goes so far with him, but continue.
Right. But because it's only 1840.
He's not disabled. Continue.
Right. But he also has no problem teasing Samantha, teasing Gerard, you know, before he even reveals the Evan Miller stuff. And when he does reveal it, he's just messing with him at times, but then he's blackmailing him too. Gabriel is a character you can tell Christopher was having fun with. And it's a joy to watch him do it, even though he's a bit of a heel in a sense. You just love him for it.
Oh, God, he gets that great monologue where he finally explains to Daniel. That's so sad. And it's so reflective of many modern adults. You know, I just wanted you to keep loving me. God. In the middle of all of it. And, you know, here's a funny thing. There's the Dark Shadows as I remember it. And there's the Dark Shadows what is. And let me tell you, the Dark Shadows as I remember it is about twice as long. Because I keep thinking that monologue really, really, really goes into depth and so on and so forth. And then I watch it as like I turn around to get some hookah coal and it's over. It's amazingly economical, but Sam Hall and Gordon were able to get that much power out of it.
They really were. And I think it's so shocking to see Gabriel, even when I went back and watched it again, get out of the wheelchair.
Yeah.
My daughter was sitting next to me, and when she watched it, she's like, her mouth hit the floor. She's like, that guy was lying, Daddy. Yeah, he was.
So So she didn't know. You haven't given her any spoilers.
No, she was sitting there watching it with me for once.
How old is she?
She's 13.
Oh. She's seen allegedly disabled people get out of wheelchairs and walk around all the time.
Oh, yeah. We show it to her every other weekend. But no, it's really...
Can you intercut that with some Benny Hinn? Of like some Benny Hinn, doing his hand thing, and Gabriel stands up.
It's really powerful. I mean, all of it. Just even before he stands up. But when he stands up, it's like it's still shocking and powerful. And it's like you just want to scream at people to be like, he's faking it. And simply because him murdering Daniel the way he does is just like, oh my God, this dude is psychotic. But you love him for it in a sense, though, too. I do have a question for you. Do you think before Judah Zachary's head, before Desmond Collins, really great character John Carlin played, brought the head, do you think that Judah Zachary is a presence prior to the head showing up?
Mm-hmm. Just because it's more fun.
Right, I agree too, because the mention of Angelique by Gabriel, and then late in the same episode the head appears, I believe Barnabas and Julia mention Miranda Duvall, and which then she comes through the door, and then they're shocked to see her. So, Barnabas is definitely shocked to see Angelique. But you notice, too, when the head, I think it's the same episode the head shows up, and right before, actually, where, who is it? God, I always forget her name. Roxanne Drew is laying in bed after Barnabas bit her, and our Barnabas hasn't come back in time yet by using the I Ching. He's about to.
That's a great story mechanic.
Right, he's about to, but the other Barnabas is still roaming around, and Barnabas has come back by this time. Sorry, Julia's trying to treat Roxanne, and Ben hasn't come back yet. She hears something, and you sort of hear it too. It sounds like a small little whisper or voice, and then things start banging around. I'm thinking, is this Judah Zachary messing with Julia?
Oh.
It's weird. It happens so fast, but it's really weird. Like, it's not, to me, it's not Barnabas, it's not Angelique, because Angelique isn't there yet. This felt like somebody, maybe Judah was messing with her.
Yeah.
And it's because, again, by the time when she goes away and comes back, guess who's gone? Roxanne.
Well, you think they wanted to create a master villain with Judah Zachary, or do you think they were just trying to pass the time?
I'd like to think they were creating this master villain.
They didn't do much with him. I mean, we got to be honest. And I love the 1840 sequence. I mean, it's like we almost don't need to go into that stuff now. But, I mean, he's just a head in a box. He talks occasionally through Gerard. Yeah. And that's great to see Gerard, have those opportunities, or James Storm, rather, have those opportunities. But for a guy who's our big Bond villain, he doesn't do quite as much as I wish he would. But, I mean, what's he going to do? Get a sunburn? You can't leave Judah his box in direct sunlight because it's like a crystal ball.
I love James Storm, him speaking through James Storm. That because, again, James Storm's performance is really great, and it's awesome in 1840. Yeah. But I sort of wish they would have took the actor, and when he had the box with the head, removed the head, put it just above, and you see this might come off sounding corny, but I don't think it would have for Dark Shadows because we've seen a lot of other things by this point.
Wait, this isn't like Hollywood Nights where they cut the hole out of that box of popcorn, is it, Joel?
He would have set a spell because again he's this powerful look, and the head would have reconnected. And I know how that sounds. It might sound laughable.
Well, wait, what happens to Gerard's head? Where does it go? Wait, he puts it above? Is it like two heads?
No. The tall guy's body. When you see the body of Judah Zachary without the head, and he has the box, when Letitia gives him the box with the head, and he goes to the box and he's touching it, I wish he would have removed the head, held it above his neck. You would have seen his lips move. You would have seen the spell be said, whatever it would have been, and his head would have reconnected with his body. And that would have been great. That would have been money in the bank. Great ratings.
But then they have a real Judah Zachary running around.
Yeah.
And what do they do with that? Maybe a lot. It's almost like you want the guys, you want the Sam and Gordon who wrote 1897 to show up at 1840. Because it feels like it's two different writing teams. I love them both. But in 1897, they would have put the head up and had that happen.
It's interesting too because we know Julia Hoffman comes under the spell of Judah Zachary in 1995, Gerard Stiles Judah Zachary / but in 1840, Letitia recruits her to help her with this, and it happens, but it fails. This is sort of where things go wrong for Judah Zachary. So now
I think when the axe hit his neck is pretty much where things really went wrong. But continue, yeah. And it's literally all downhill from there, depending on where the block is.
Right.
And get me off this crazy thing. It's just your severed head, George. Continue.
You'll be fine, right? Put a Band-Aid on it. But no, after everything collapses, he can't use his body now. And so James Storm's character, really, Gerard Stiles, Evan Miller, whatever you want to call him, they're going to use him to now possess. And why not? They've tried it with Desmond. It worked for a bit, but Desmond finally fought it, and then Letitia. So here's the third person. You also have a henchman of Judah Zachary who shows up, because remember, the guy, James Storm's character, throws the head off Widow's Hill.
Mm-hmm.
So, and after that,
hit Bill Malloy. It went this time and hit Bill Malloy. How sad.
He was aiming for him. But so you finally meet a henchman of Judah Zachary, or a former cult member, or at least someone who's loyal to him. And this is what causes James Storm's character to get possessed. And everybody, Angelique thinks that Judah Zachary is Quentin, which is really interesting. It's like you're thinking, well, come on, Angelique, you can figure this out. But no, she thinks it's Quentin. And it's like,
girl,
you find out that, well, we know it's James Storm's character, Gerard Stiles. So it's really, really cool to see him be able to be this big, heavy hitter, but also that during this trial that Quentin gets arrested for, the witchcraft trial, they're being very protective of the head because they have to be.
Sure.
And it
should have that helmet from Pagemaster.
Because I sort of see what you're saying mostly here during this trial, that you it seems like they're pulling back on the character a bit because they're not having him be this fully tilt heel until nearly really the end.
Yeah, and this is where we have to, again, if there's a theme to this, it's, what's this hookah hose doing? If there's a theme to this, it's the dark shadows I want, the dark shadows I imagine, and shadows that is. And the dark shadows that is was a network soap opera in 1971 with no bigger budget than Guiding Light. And let's be honest. To praise Dark Shadows, we must be ruthlessly honest with its problems, because God knows other people are, and I hate them. But the fact is that they were not in the business of doing Marvel comics. They were not in the business of doing supernatural James Bond novels, or, I forget who the British author was, the one who wrote Devil Rides Out, and, all of the satanic British, novels like the Magna Carta. But that's the issue, is that ultimately they are gonna crap out more often than not and do something that the budget can stand and that audiences can stand. I've often said, if you play to the most average guy in the room, you do the most average show in town. If you play to the dumbest guy in the room, you do the dumbest show in town. Well, Dark Shadows was doing neither. However, there's a Robert Browning quote that says, if a man's reach does not exceed his grasp, what's heaven for? And 1897, the reach exceeds the grasp. They're just going for it. They don't care if they can get it. As epic as 1840 is, it kind of grounds itself, maybe prematurely, by not going further into the Marvel Comics route.
Yeah.
And that's not a criticism of it. That's just, we have to deal with what we have, and to try and be sympathetic about the production demands that created what we have.
I think if they could have found a way to not necessarily kill off Judah Zachary, but continue this somehow in the present, then this would have been a better payoff. It would have been a better payoff to find a way to continue this fight in the present. And I mean, the mask is still around that Judah Zachary wore. I think you brought that up once.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they could have did this, and still could, really, even in the sequel series if they do that. But again,
Roger wanders around naked with the mask on late at night. That's why they say, David, don't leave your bedroom. Carolyn, don't leave your bedroom.
Everybody lock your door.
Yeah, he's got that mask on, at least, but it's a little too high.
Oh my goodness. But I do think because they have to pull back, it feels like, man, this was a big, heavy heel. I mean, they built this character as a big, heavy heel.
Yes, they did. And RuPaul is pissed off about
it. I mean, from 1995 to 1970 to now 1840, I look at Judah Zachary like I look at Apocalypse to X-Men. Like I look at, I don't know, whether you want to say Thanos or Galactus.
Mr. Woodrow to Cotter.
This is just supposed to be the biggest fight in Dark Shadows history, and we're taking it to a witchcraft trial where Barnabas is the lawyer. What? Because
we don't know what Barnabas's degree is in. It might be law. He's been to school, and I don't think just Collinsport Community College, where he took like English 101 and theater. No, I think he took something real.
One of my favorite things in 1840, my favorite scene, is when Barnabas decides to trust Angelique, to literally he feels like, hey, I have nothing else to lose here. And
it's a great moment. You talk and I talk.
It really, it's one of the most surreal moments in Dark Shadows history, and great moments, because we've seen these two characters go through a lot together as bitter enemies, as one-time lovers, and now here he tells her, you'll have my gratitude. You know what, that's enough. It's like, why not? And she turns him back normal. She breaks the spell, she really relinquishes the curse. And it's just this, it's like, okay, Angelique's all right. Angelique really is. And so is Barnabas always has been, but it took, because Barnabas knows what's at stake. I mean, I think that's one of the most important things too. It's not about, Joe Zed. It's not about what happened in 1795 anymore. This is about something so much bigger. And he cannot let this force, this Judah Zachary win, and he knows it. He, like I said, he has nothing to lose. But go ahead.
I just love what you say. I'm just in rapture of it. I'm transported. I really am. I think that there's an adage in psychology. I've seen a lot of therapists. Good God, write the day book and not see a lot of therapists, but mostly about how handsome I am. But seriously, I've seen a lot of therapists, and one of the phrases that they use a lot is "get out." But also they use this phrase called "change the dance." So if what you're doing isn't working, change the dance. Do something different. If it hurts to move your arm like this, don't move your arm like that. Change the dance. And Barnabas changes the dance. And I love that about him. So he has to trust Angelique. And here's the thing. He's seen later versions of Angelique do great things.
Yeah.
He has, because this is Angelique. This is really only, as far as we're concerned, Angelique 2.0. This is Angelique just, 45 years or so, 43 years after the whole vampire incident, 45 years, depending on when they claim the 1795 storyline happened. Sometimes it's 1796, sometimes 1797. But yeah, he knows what she's capable of. He knows that she's already cured him once, which they kind of don't bring up. Mm-hmm. When Barnabas is, when he finally gets cured, he's, for the first time, I'm seeing the sunrise. It's like, well, Barnabas, by my calculations, for about half of the series, you've been a human. So I guess you're just hung over a lot and you didn't see the sunrise. But yeah, it's out there. It's burning a hole through, your hangover. But anyway, that's what I think goes on, and it's a wonderful thing to see. It's a mature thing to see. It's a place where you can definitely tell that the character's grown and the show's grown.
Yeah, and I like how Barnabas tells, when she first walks in the door, Barnabas tells Julia to go, and you have her.
Did she find out it was actually Captain America, like Bucky did? What's Bucky doing watching Steve Rogers change? Anyway, continue.
You have her well trained, and she goes, I look forward to getting to know each other. And I love what Julie says. I already know you.
Yeah,
it's like I love Laura Parker's reaction to this. She's shocked, and she should be. This is 1840.
She has no idea what she's dealing with Grayson Hall.
Yeah.
She's dealing with the glove of Thanos. But two of them.
Yeah. It really just great performances all around. I actually love too Lamar Trask, the character. He's not a preacher. He gets to be a Undertaker.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. I love this little change with the Trask here. He still gets to be a bit preachy, but not as much. But I love the confrontation. To me, we get a better confrontation between this Trask and Barnabas than we do any other. Really, really heavy stuff.
It gets personal. It gets personal because he killed his dad.
Yep.
And when did old man Trask have a chance to father a child? How'd that happen? Anyway, ask Noah Gifford. I think he set the whole thing up. Noah Gifford. I think Noah Gifford was the mother. Let's face it. That's how this really went on. So, Craig Slocum. What an unfortunate name to have if you're playing a character named Harry Johnson. I mean, think about it, Jewel. Anyway, they're not going to hear this part. So, as I was saying, when Harry Johnson impregnates Lamar Trask, and they give birth to Pansy Faye, all of Collinsport celebrates when Bob the bartender performs the birthing. Anyway, what was I saying? I was talking about what? God knows. I got lost in free association hell. Trask. Okay, so this is really, and I talked about this. This is the first episode of the Trask House Daybook. This is the first episode of a totally different series when Trask finally shows up and comes into his own and is in Barnabas's house waiting for him to show up so Barnabas can talk about, burying his dad alive and all. Isn't that a scene where Trask gets to the old house before him and is kind of waiting?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Or am I hallucinating? I wrote about it, but that doesn't mean I didn't hallucinate it. So yeah, you got to realize, and this is something, Mark Berry, that they should really do in the next series, is that the Collinses have at least two other great houses that they interact with. There's the House of Dupre, that eventually leads to the Evanses and some overdone coffee, and some lousy paintings. He's no Leroy Neiman. And then you have the House of Trask. So you have sort of the house that becomes the ordinary folk, and you have the Collinses who remain, the regal presences in charge, and then you have the Trasks who remain the loyal opposition. One of the things I would do in a new series is I would play around a lot with names. I would let the name of Dupre stay. I would let the name, the fourth house is the House of Stokes.
Yep.
So you got Stokes, Dupre, Trask, and Collins. And, the Trasks, as far as they're concerned, let's face it, there's a lot of blood on the hands of the Collinses. They're dealing, they're the representatives we see are a bunch of underhanded, sniveling, romance shooting jerks. But that doesn't mean they're the only Trasks, because the family couldn't survive and prosper to the point that Gregory could make, Trask Academy or whatever. What's it called? Windward House?
Worthington Hall.
Worthington Hall. Yeah, he wouldn't be able to afford Worthington Hall. I guess he took Minerva's money or something. But still, he went to, he went to the internet and got his Universal Life Church, documentation so that he could be a reverend and so on and so forth. So Lamar is in some ways the most noble of them. He's in love. He's sort of got a thing going on with Roxanne, which we forget about, and he loses that. He's got a real job.
Yeah.
We can't rely on superstition or something. He's actually got to put dead bodies back together. And people died horribly back then. And this is 1840. The Civil War hasn't happened yet, but it's coming up. And it's going to be even worse in Parallel Time, which is where he lands. And why on earth didn't the show just pursue him into Parallel Time? Imagine this. So we get back from 1841, and Barnabas sort of wonders how Parallel Time Maggie is doing or whatever, and goes to the Parallel Time room to see if Collinwood's still burnt or whatnot. And everything is colossally screwed up, even beyond the measure of parallel time. And it's because of the presence of Lamar Trask that somehow parallel time was behind a little bit in technology or something. And Lamar Trask, like General Thade in the horrible remake of Planet of the Apes, sort of influences what's going on and becomes a great figure. And now there's some sort of fascistic theocracy or something like that that's taken over the timeline since the 1970s that we knew. And that's where, Lamar Trask's legacy is. And that's somehow where Angelique is trapped.
You could also have somebody say, I remember when this was called Collinwood instead of Trask House.
Yeah, instead of Trask House. Yeah.
Right. And it would have been a hell of a thing to see. And he's really, again, he's such a cold-blooded character too. I mean, you're right, he's in love, but he's so set on vengeance and avenging his father. I love how Pansy Faye gets tangled up in this story too, or sorry, Letitia Faye in this story too. I don't know why I was thinking of Pansy Faye, but
there's a vast difference between the two characters.
Yeah. But I like the fact how Letitia Faye gets tangled up in the story, and even James Storm's character is sort of like, oh, you want to see Letitia. So she finally agrees to help him. Barnabas interrupts the first time, but then finally when he finds out, it's like, oh shit.
He's heard rumors of her through the dollhouse. She appeared in the dollhouse at first.
Yes, and I love Flora. Joan Bennett as Flora Collins is just such a different character than what she's played up until this point.
I liked it with that all of that stuff that she's doing, which is basically me when I'm not on camera here. And Flora, they kept putting Flora in the water. It meant communism. I would like to think that Flora has skeletons of babies in the backyard, and all of that is covering up the darkest character in all of Dark Shadows. And if Quentin's execution, if that blade had come just an inch closer, Flora would have shown up, and it would have been just some terrifying. She's a Cenobite, just horrible Clive Barker type stuff that we don't know, but still with that is my favorite Joan Bennett character. It genuinely is.
She's got the Hellraiser puzzle box in her closet.
You did a whole thing. Didn't you do a thing about Hellraiser and Dark Shadows?
I've did two of these videos. I'll send them both to you when we get done here. But I've did 2 Hellraiser Dark Shadows videos that are really fun.
Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of characters, I think, in Dark Shadows that would be very, very interested in having that puzzle box.
Oh, of course.
I mean,
Quentin would become Pinhead.
Yes. 1970 parallel time, Quentin?
I don't know if he'd have the patience.
Yeah, it's true.
He would just, I can't figure this out, and destroy it, and demons would come up and eat his face. And then Andrew Robinson would swoop in and say, don't worry, I'll be more reasonable. I love Andy Robinson. Yeah, I think the original Quentin, 1897 Quentin, that's right up his alley. Because 1840 Quentin would know better.
Yeah.
I'm not touching that thing. I'll make a time staircase. I'm not doing that. Hey, Desmond, come here. You want to? No, you're not going to do it. Okay, well, somebody will. Hey, Stokes. Oh, yeah, I'll do your puzzle box for you.
I'll tell you somebody who I never even thought to mention in either of those videos was Dirk Wilkins. I could have seen Dirk.
Oh, Dirk, definitely. You know who else would have been big into the puzzle box? This is who would have been Pinhead. Tim Shaw.
Yes.
As bitter as he is, as eager as he is to use the hand. And there's Amanda. Why do you have to? He nevertheless, he would have been all over that thing.
I really liked how, for all the heat that the character of gets for being this villain, that James Storm's character gets for being this villain, he's not a villain right away. He is
He isn't. He's just a guy. He's a little manipulative. He wants to horn in on Quentin's marriage.
Right. But in a lot of ways, he's this guy who's coming to see Quentin's family because he's Quentin's friend. He thought he saw them die, and you're sort of feeling sorry for him right away. Again, it's 1840 isn't what you think it is right away, but it's becoming that slowly but surely, or not. Well, to me, not as slow as I'd like to remember. I think it all happens pretty fast, really. But
it depends on the episode you watch.
Right.
Some of them are pretty slow.
But really, just James Storm does an amazing job transcending from this normal dude to now he's possessed by this powerful warlock, and he's trying not to show it until his henchman comes around, which is really cool.
I know James of having so much work to do at the end of 1840 because they're having to say goodbye to all these characters who are tied to Barnabas because Fred doesn't want to keep going, and they don't have the foolishness or the guts to replace him with another actor, which is what I would have done. Mm-hmm. I come up with a reason to have his brain go in somebody else's body, and he keep Barnabas going. But they didn't do that. They like the imagination threshold kind of hit a bump, and they said no, they won't accept anyone else's Barnabas. But of course, at this time, the only example other than Johnny Weissmuller and Basil Rathbone sitting in a tree was James Bond. And they had just gone through the Valley of the Shadow of Lazenby, and I don't think they wanted to try, making Barnabas the next James Bond, because he would have been terrible on those, in Dr. No when she comes out of the water, because he would have fried. But you know what I mean, replacing him. Right. So they're having to finish a lot of stuff, Jewel. They're having to wrap up a lot of stuff. And one of the things that falls by the wayside is really the tragedy of Gerard Stiles.
Yeah.
They just kind of like, and then now it's over. It really makes it realistic because that's how real life is. But
really, too, they're not going to continue the Judah Zachary arc either. That's another thing, too.
Well, his head's turned into a skeleton head. No.
True.
They put it on the funeral pyre and let the Ewoks sing in the background as a glowing, friendly Judah Zachary appears and nods to Barnabas because he's good now.
Well, I know, right?
Boy and Xandor kind of all gone blue and nodding at him.
Yeah, Jonathan doesn't want to play Barnabas anymore. He's going to play a different character on Dark Shadows in another parallel time universe.
Yeah, and I like Bramwell. He's a good character. He's a wonderful change for Jonathan Frid.
If you could have replaced Frid as Barnabas, who would you have chose?
Who was available then and would have done a soap opera? Oh boy. I would have. You know what I would have done?
What's up?
This is great. I would have had Quentin become possessed with Barnabas.
Nice.
Because David Selby's a tremendous actor. They've run out of stuff for Quentin to do. They really have. Meaning, QC2. They've run out of things for him to do. So consolidate your lead character. Somehow Quentin is possessed by the ghost of Barnabas or takes the ghost of Barnabas into him or something like that, and he flies off on an I Ching trance somewhere. That's what I would have had happen. I would have had Patofi show up in the modern era, kind of do his brain switcheroo thing, and then, Barnabas dies, the body gets staked or something, or wanders into the sunlight or, in front of a Yugo or something, and he's gone, but his spirit is in Quentin. And in his head, I don't think I wouldn't have done it like a Jedzia Dax thing,
right?
But yeah, Yeah, you know what, Jonathan? We love you. You're fine. But Selby's cuter. And he's willing to do what we want. And we can do this around Barbra Streisand movies. So let's do it.
Why not? But I think it's sort of sad that they're having to wrap up all this because it's a great story arc. And, to me it is. I know.
No, it's a great. No, I'm not. I argue with none of it.
Right.
I'll tell you one of the things I think that makes it great. It's not those red hats. They don't make anything great again. But rather, hey, I stand with the president. The thing is that it's one of the main reasons it's great is because it can take the number of chances, some of them very subtle, like you pointed out, Barnabas deciding to trust Angelique. It's like, what the hell? Sure. What? You've already put me through every shade of living hell possible. If you got a new trick up your sleeve, let's just get it out of the way. And if not, maybe I'll be cured. But the only way they could do all of those things is because they knew they were writing out the character. And with the character, all of the characters who were connected.
I was shocked that they sort of shoot Angelique. To me, it's one of the most, it's a bit heartbreaking, but it's like, I can't believe they did it. They just killed Angelique. Were you shocked?
Sure. I mean, I knew it was coming, but yeah, I was shocked. I'll tell you, have I talked much about the 45-day watch through that I did?
I was watching some videos on your channel when you were doing videos on your channel about Dark Shadows.
Yeah. Were they the clothed ones?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Go ahead.
Here, it got weird after a while. Anyway, what about it?
You were talking about you were going through episodes of Dark Shadows, and I was listening to your videos. I was trying to remember if you mentioned it in one of those videos, but I can't quite remember. So go ahead.
There is a video I did not upload. And when I was originally devising this whole thing with Stephen Perkins, we talked about doing the daily check-ins, the daily video check-ins, and we sort of joked. Of course, Freud said there's no such thing as a joke, but we sort of joked about the fact that there would come the moment when it was all too much for me, and I would have the leave Brittany alone moment breakdown on camera. And it never happened. I took great care with those videos, and I looked great in that last one. Oh my God. But the night Angelique died, because you're living with these people for 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day.
Right.
The night Angelique died was the second to last night of this. It was the end of night 44. And I had put up with 44 days of basically not leaving the house, devoting my life to Dark Shadow, learning how to do these videos. I thank God I had friends who visited and kept me busy, but you begin to identify with the characters on a level that you just can't watching in a half hour a day or something. I mean, it really gets deep. And I didn't realize how much I identified with Barnabas. So I go to bed. I did a little video, a little reaction video, Angelique being shot and so on. I go to bed. I'm lying in bed. And as I'm drifting off, I have just one thought. And I think, and this is what an experiment like that does to you. I thought, knowing it was all fiction, what is Barnabas doing right now?
Mm-hmm.
I bet he's miserable. I bet he's trying to hold it together. He's trying to maintain a good face for Elizabeth. And, he's at the Historical Society because Stokes wouldn't even let him go to the funeral. His thoughts are back in 1840. And, of course, the staircase has been destroyed behind him, so he can't even go back. And I suddenly realized that it would be the greatest show of bravery and effort that Barnabas Collins ever had. Just maintaining the illusion that everything was okay in that moment. And suddenly it occurred to me after everything he has been through, how unbelievably cruel that moment was for him as a character. I mean, it's brilliant storytelling. Torture the characters. The audience will love it. That's the only way they learn anything. But for Barnabas as a character, we posit that he has an inner life. That, I remember I got up and I filmed a reaction, which is still unreleased, and I was hysterical. Which, for people who find me unfunny, will say it's a first. But I was hysterical in the other way. I was crying. I was very upset. And I remember saying that television and great stories and epic poems, sure, tragedies are supposed to be sad, but they're not supposed to be cruel. And this was just flat out cruel to Barnabas. But the character lives large. And so the cruelty he suffers will be large. That's who Barnabas is. That's his function. And that was a hell of a moment. So that's my thought on Angelique being shot.
There's a moment, too, after she's shot, and he knows she's going to die. I mean, he knows.
Yeah.
There's a moment in Fred's face where he's not saying it with his mouth. It's almost like he's saying it with his face, too, that, wait a second, I know Angelique, yes, we know Angelique did curse him, but he's sort of wondering, was I just always meant to be cursed, meant to be alone? Was it me? Was I
Yeah, did the curse pre-exist Angelique, and she just put a name to it?
Right. And it's such great psychology in that moment because it's so heavy. And it's, again, Dark Shadows always knew how to punch its audience. And it's literally just, you're to the floor at this point. It's like, just end it, dude, end it. And it's like, damn, she dies. It's like, no, come back. And when he chases Lamar Trask, it's like, get him.
Yeah. I mean, had Jonathan Frid not wanted to quit Barnabas, that story would have gone right over into 1841 parallel time. And Bromwell would have been killed or something, and suddenly Barnabas has to pretend to be Bromwell and navigate this story. And he's there with Catherine. And it's like, God, is she Angelique or not? But I'm going to love her twice as hard. And, of course, seeing Bromwell and Catherine and all of that in 1841, as Barnabas is basically going into the other wing and watching Dark Shadows. Whenever they open up that room, that's them watching Dark Shadows. That's where he got the inspiration to do right by Angelique. It's about time.
It would have been interesting too to watch if Barnabas goes through to 1841 parallel time, where he would have been trying to convince Catherine that she's Angelique. That would have been interesting.
The last thing you would think Barnabas would do, try and convince someone they're Angelique, try and awaken the inner Angelique. But he knows who she really is, even when she doesn't. And that's what makes it one of the greatest romances in all of fiction.
It does. Really great. I love how Quentin. What did you think of Quentin Quentin and John Carlin's character getting sent to the gallows, getting sent to get their heads cut off?
Those are men. They're slapping each other around and joking as they're on the way to the gallows. And, good Lord, it's like they read the script of the next episode. They're like the Rat Pack. And, on a show, that is not exactly, RuPaul's Drag Race when it comes to manliness.
Right.
It's a pretty effeminate show. It's like they save up all of the genuinely masculine moments for that episode as they're kidding around, going to the gallows, making jokes with each other and all of that. I love that. Wow, how unexpected, how great. It's the opposite of that horrible Attack of the Clones movie, which begins with Anakin and Obi-Wan in an elevator, sort of vaguely referring to past adventures, as if that's supposed to make us accept that they're good pals, rather than showing us. It's the opposite of that. We have seen them earn it.
Yeah. I really think to me, Desmond Collins is my favorite character John Carlin played. He's so different than a Willie Loomis or anything else. It's so good.
He's not nearly as manly as Carl. Oh, what's he paying Taffy? Continue.
I love how him and Ben's reaction together too, when Ben's like, "What did you do to upset your mother?" And he shows Ben the head, and
I
Ben's,
gave her a head, a human head. I mean,
yeah, and Ben's just like,
a lot of moms like that.
I love how he's like, when he first shows the head, he's walking, he's all smiling, showing the head around. The College Sport Historical Society has a picture of this, which is so cool.
It's great.
He's like, I got this for Quentin. Then he lies to Quentin about, hey, I got you these books, not a separate, but then he tells him the truth later.
There's this other thing. There's the Columbia House subscription, and then there's this. It's a severed head. I don't know what you want to do with it. Put it on top of the tree. I don't know. What do we do with Judah Zachary's head?
Does it light up?
It's like Hugo, Man with 1,000 Faces, put little disguises on him. I got a Hugo in my classroom.
Is there anything you want to add before we get out of here, Ben?
Lots.
Go ahead.
Won't. No, I will say that, to put it into a different historic context, this was the most elusive part of the series for those of us who joined during syndication to see. Because the rumor, I worked at a public television station back then, and which was really just a kiosk in the mall. But seriously, I worked at a public television station back then that was showing Dark Shadows, and we knew pretty early on that we were not going to be getting 1840. The things ended. That last package ended. It ended in the middle of parallel time. So we were not going to get anything. The rumor is that World Vision made the rest of the series really reasonable, thinking that people would get hooked, which, presumes that people have a soul. But because they don't, and they were busy watching Wheel of Fortune or something, which Patofi would have been a great host for. Because they don't, no one ever saw it. They charged a king's ransom. I mean, they wanted like thousands, so the rumor went, per episode. And so no station was going to show it. Maybe WOR or something in New York did, but really in the major markets, other major markets, we didn't get it at all. And so for me, it was the Great White Whale. I got the Kathleen Resch Concordance, the 1840 Concordance, which has some marvelous essays in it. And I read these very long, detailed descriptions of the plots, but it was the great unknown. I mean, a friend of mine, Dave Eichenberger, and I, every night during our lunch break, would talk about how we didn't think we would ever see that. So it's a very mythologized series, part of the series for me. And when I go back and watch it now, I still feel like I'm getting away with something. And it feels extra special. So all of the people who complain about it moving too fast, really, guys, really, just watch it every day. You do anyway. The people who say, oh, it moves too fast, or it's confusing, or the writers didn't know what they were talking about. I have, unless they're going to buy a copy of the Dark Shadows Daybook, I have no patience for them. I think they are small-minded pedants who have more Dark Shadows to enjoy. You love the show, And this is a distillation of everything great in it for me, except it doesn't have Josette. And it proves, because it does repeat things, but Dark Shadows isn't necessarily in the business of just doing the same thing over and over again. It does it as a corkscrew. It shows progress. Yes, it's moving forward, but it's going over certain things again, but forward in time, where we have learned something and the characters have learned something. So we see them cycling through these lessons, but treating it a little bit differently than they did the last time. And that's proof of the pudding is Barnabas and Angelique, who, yeah, they might be in analogous situations, but good God, they've changed from 1795's witch trial. And that's what I love about it. This and the jet black, almost unwatchable nihilism of the Ragnarok sequence that leads into it, which is that 1970 thing. I love. It's my favorite section of the series. I don't care who knows it.
I think really the great thing for fans, too, of DS like us is no matter how many times you go back through and watch Dark Shadows, it's something you go back through and watch again and again and again because you're just hooked. And this great writing and this great acting has hooked you from the beginning all the way to the end. And you're just, when you're done, you just want more of it.
Sure.
And I think that's just the mark of the great storytelling Dark Shadows is. And if you want great storytelling about Dark Shadows, if you haven't read the Dark Shadows Daybook, written by this man here, Patrick McCray.
I got news about that, but keep talking.
Link will be in the description box. Go buy it. Go ahead, my friend. What do you want to say?
The second book is looking, I think, really good. It went through another major editing hurdle, and Wallace is going to start working on the art after Halloween.
Cool.
So in November, he's going to start working on the art. So I've got to have everything finished by then. But it is a bigger book. It's about 400 pages.
Nice.
I had a really, really, really bright guy, the gentleman who does the Roger Collins role play on Twitter, who's a really brilliant man. He read it over a weekend, and I got like 132 separate positive comments from him as he read it. So it's going to be an interesting book because the selection of pieces don't necessarily cover all of the heavy-hitting episodes to the extent that the first book does. But the pieces were written a little later, and I think as writing, they're better, and as analysis, they're better. As I've said, sort of jokingly, but not, I am not my biggest fan. I am realistically critical of my own work, so I can keep myself honest. Better that than the opposite. And this, I'm really excited to see come into print. I may be more excited about this than the first day book.
I actually did that with my most recent story that I'm doing, that the Desert Rose Killer. They took a part of chapter 3 that I haven't dropped yet, and I switched something around because I didn't like what I did.
Oh, yeah. Well, tell me about that.
Well, there's this guy who no one knows his real name. He's all dressed. He is in black leather pants, black boots, a black cowboy hat, black shades, black gloves, and
which men's room did you meet him in? Continue.
And he drives this black van, and he kills people by using a bow and arrow and knives very silently, and he gets paid to do it. And he's a very ruthless person. And again, not even his partner, who's been working with him for 3 years, knows his name. He even says, "I don't know your name." And he said, "You never will."
They just call him SBD, silent but deadly.
Well, they call him the Man in Black, really. That's what he refers to him as. But he knows there's going to be a sequence in chapter 3 where the Man in Black lays out this map, and it reveals not something about him, but about who they're about to deal with.
Okay.
So, again, I don't want to reveal too much, but that's at the end of chapter 3. But the Dark Shadows Daybook is awesome, guys. I read the first one, and yes, because my wife already asked me. I'm going to pre-order the second one as soon as it comes.
Yeah, your work cut out for you reading this one out loud. That's the last one was 19 hours. This one's gonna be probably about 40.
So another book in parts. I'm ready, buddy.
That's good, man. You're a saint.
I'm ready. I feel like SpongeBob. I'm ready. But for my buddy Patrick McCray, who's always awesome to have as a guest, you want to do this next weekend?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you talk about?
The Vampires of Collinsport. I want to do that.
Oh, I'm all about it. And isn't there a certain Three Musketeers project that
we do got to do that one. We will do that one sometime after that one. I've yet to watch it, actually. I've been a little bit
good. It's so good. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to watching the Gene Kelly version, which I have never seen.
It's really, I own the Gene Kelly one on DVD. I honestly think that the Man in the Iron Mask, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio, is a sequel to that movie. So, in my opinion, it is anyway, as a fan. So, once again, for Patrick McCray, go buy the Dark Shadows Daybook on Amazon if you haven't already. It's an awesome read.
Jules saying, sometimes when we touch, the honesty's too much.
It is. Thank you, my friend. You have a great night.
Take care.
You too. Bye.